Hey guys, it's Meredith and welcome back to my channel. So as you could tell from the title, today I'm going to be talking about my 10 favorite books that I read in 2021. I have rewritten this list probably about 5 times and it's still the same books, but just some numbers get swapped around. So do with that as you will. I would say the only ones that I really have set in stone, those are the numbers, are my top 3 books. So starting off is probably the book that I could see getting the most judgment for, and that is Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. Does this book have its flaws? Yes. Is it the greatest piece of literature that I have ever read? No. But I had so much fun with this book. I loved the pen pals aspect of the book. I loved that it really showed us more about Misha and Ryan's relationship and how they can open up with each other and how much they rely on these letters to basically get all of their feelings and thoughts out with someone. I also just loved the angst of it. I think that if I would have read this in high school, that it would have been one of my all-time favorite books. It does take place in high school, but I honestly just picture them older, and I don't know if that's because I don't read a ton of books about people in high school, so I just kind of picture the characters like they're my age or something. But anyway, I still really loved this book. I would recommend it, but just know that it is not a perfect book, but it is a very, very fun book. Next up is a book that I do not own, but it is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. I read this when I was reading Haley Hughes' favorite books, and so of course I had to include Pretty Girls. And I was really nervous because I know that this is such a loved book, but it is so dark and so disturbing and so unlike anything that I usually read. But I really, really liked it, surprisingly, and even more surprising, it made me emotional and made me tear up, and I was not expecting that out of this book. This is one that I would highly recommend looking up trigger warnings because the list goes on. It is so dark and so disturbing and just a lot to take in, but I still really enjoyed it and I just never really knew where it was going. Usually with thrillers, I am always trying to guess what's going to happen and try to fit everything together, and I just kind of gave up with doing it in this book because things kept surprising me, and I don't know, I just really loved it. Keeping on the theme of Haley's favorites, Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. I had never read a book by Jennifer Hillier until this one, and oh my gosh, it just blew me out of the water. I was so intrigued with the characters in this book and the story, and it was another one that I just never knew what was going to happen next. I was just trying to think, you know, what could the plot twist be? How could this? It just seems so straightforward until you get to the plot twist, and it was just, it was crazy. It was not even a theory in my mind. I didn't put the pieces together at all, and it's another one that I just had so much fun with. But also with this one, there are definitely some darker themes in it, so look up some trigger warnings before just jumping into this one. But I really did enjoy it, and I ended up picking up Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier this year, which I also enjoyed, and so I'm really excited to continue reading her backlist in 2022. Alright, next is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. I was so pleasantly surprised with how much I loved this entire story and just everything about it. I mean, the main character in this book was really not a good person. She made a lot of questionable decisions throughout the book, and yet just I was just rooting for her. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It was just so good. I also really loved the setting of the book. I really enjoyed that it took place on the same college campus, but it showed glimpses into the past when they were students and then now when they are coming back for the reunion. While I could guess some things that would happen, like I had theories, I was constantly changing them. I mean, I think I had suspected every single character in the book at least probably twice. I just kept going back and forth on who I thought did it. It was just so fun. Highly recommend. Such a fun read, and I'm so excited to read more from Ashley Winstead in 2022. Next up is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This freaking book, I loved this book, and honestly, it is the best plot twist I think that I have ever read, and not because of what happens, but exclusively because of the writing of the plot twist. I thought that it was so well done, and it is one of the few thrillers that I have read that have had my jaw just on the floor. It was another one where I had theories on what was going to happen, and honestly, the way that this book was set up, I had no clue what happened. Nothing that I really thought was correct, and yeah, I really loved it, and to this day, I will sometimes just think on the plot twist in this book. It was insane. Highly recommend if you haven't. I know this is a super hype book, and I'm kind of late to finally getting to it, but incredible. Incredible. Next, Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. This book, oh my gosh, I could get emotional just thinking about this book.
Emotional, damn it!
I know that this is hyped everywhere on BookTube, Book Talk. It's just, it deserves all of the hype that it is getting. I cried, I laughed, I just enjoyed every minute of it. I sobbed in this book, and honestly, when I found out, you know, the whole story of Miles's past and why his past is affecting him in the way that it is, I just was, there's no way that you could possibly guess that that's what was happening, and it's so heartbreaking, and just please read this book, it's so good. Okay, now we're in the number 4 spot, and I know that I said that my top 3 were set in stone, but I think this one is also. It's my number 4, and it's The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I don't even know where to start with this book. In case you haven't seen the picture of me just uncontrollably sobbing on vacation while reading this book, here you go. There it is for your viewing pleasure. This book just has everything. It is so emotional. The setting is beautiful. I'm obsessed. This is only the second Kristen Hanna book that I have read. I read The Nightingale last year, and it was my number 1 book of the year. Number 1 book of all time, honestly. I mean, the way she can write just a setting where you can vividly picture yourself there, and the characters that you just care so much about. And this book doesn't really even have a huge plot to it. It's just kind of just about the characters, and you're just reading about their lives in Alaska, and I loved it so much. I am so excited to get some more Kristen Hanna in 2022. I own a decent amount of her books, and I am always just kind of nervous to go into them because they are thick, and like I said, there's not a huge plot to it, so they're not books that I really read quickly, but they're books that I love spending time with and getting to know the characters and reading about their story. So The Great Alone was no exception. It's beautiful. Just read it. It's so good. If you haven't picked up a Kristen Hanna book, please pick up a Kristen Hanna book. Please. I'm begging you. Like, just beautiful, beautiful stories. Okay, it's my top 3. I'm so excited. I have such a passion for the 3 books that I'm about to talk about. So here we go. Number 3, Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I have a whole spoiler-free reading vlog about this book that I did back in February when I received an ARC for this book. And it's basically just me non-stop raving about everything in this book. It was so good. Taylor Jenkins Reid is another author that I just really connect with her writing and her characters. I just think that it's so beautifully done. I loved the family storyline in this. I loved the conversation about how women have these roles that they're just assumed that they'll fill, like taking care of the family while the man goes off to, you know, live his dream and work. And I just thought it was so well done. I really love this with my whole heart, and I love this cover. It's beautiful. Taylor Jenkins Reid. You can do no wrong in my eyes. My final two, I struggled so hard with picking which one would be one and which one would be two, because I just love them so incredibly much. But in the end, I had to decide that my number two was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I feel like this book was decently hyped in the summer, and for some reason I keep seeing this pop up on a decent amount of people's most disappointing books of the year. So I am here to rave about it and convince you to read it in case you have been swayed differently. My connection with this book was so just intense, and I really think that I set myself up for a great experience reading this. I mean, I read it on the beach while I was on vacation, so I'm reading about Poppy and Alex having their vacations while I'm also on vacation. I also just really related to both Poppy and Alex, which was so nice to read about in a romance, because it's just so rare that I relate to both people in the romance. I usually connect to just one person, but I think there were definitely personality traits of Poppy that I could see in myself, and then Alex was more of the reserved, introverted, kind of shy one, and I definitely related to that. And I don't know, I connected with this book so much. Emily Henry has just climbed the charts of being one of my favorite authors. From Beach Read to People We Meet on Vacation, those are two of my all-time favorite romances. I'm just so excited to read more from her, because this book truly just, it's hard to find the words to explain just why it's so special. I just really connected with it, and so yeah, and look at the cover, it's beautiful, it's so beautiful. And finally, my number one book of 2021 was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. It seems so basic because this book has been hyped everywhere this year, but for good reason. It's just so good and so worth the hype. I did know some of the things that were coming in the book, so I knew that it would be a bit of a heavier story, but I was still expecting it to be mostly a romance, and I just think this book has so much more than just a romance. You learn so much about Lily and her childhood and her friendship / relationship with Atlas when they were younger, and just how she grew up is kind of affecting decisions she's making now. And it is such a beautiful book. It's another one, I think when I find books that are just so special to me that it's just hard to even get the words across on why I love them so much, because I don't think words could accurately express how much I love this book. I mean, when we find out how the title comes into play, I couldn't. I was so unwell at the end of this book. And then Colleen Hoover drops the author's note on us, and just, I was left speechless. I didn't know what to say. This is probably also the fastest I've ever rated a book 5 stars. But like I said, it is not a light and cheesy romance at all. I've kind of seen some book talks that make it seem like it's, I don't know, like a love triangle, and that, you know, she has to pick between two guys, kind of making it seem like it's a little more fluffy than it is. And it is definitely not a fluffy read. It is so heavy and intense and tackles so many important topics, and I highly recommend this. It's so good. So yes, it deserves all of the hype it's getting, 1000%. So those were my top 10 books of 2021. Let me know in the comments if there are any books that made your top 10 list, or if you disagree with any of these picks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you would like to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!